Forget James Bond. Real espionage history is about acoustic kitties, exploding bats, and armies made of balloons. We are exposing 44 of the most deranged, expensive, and embarrassing spy gadgets ever funded by your tax dollars. From the CIA failing to train cats to ancient invisible ink made of questionable fluids. If you think military intelligence is actually intelligent, prepare to be disappointed. 1. Imagine being a top-tier Soviet spy, and your greatest security threat is a stray cat. Back in the 1960s, the CIA poured $20 million into Project Acoustic Kitty, turning a living feline into a cyborg listening device. Surgeons implanted a microphone inside the ear canal, ran an antenna along the spine, and hit a transmitter in the chest. The grand strategy was to drop this million-dollar furball near Soviet embassies to eavesdrop on secret chatter. The fatal flaw was assuming cats care about geopolitics. During its very first field deployment in Washington, D.C., the highly trained cyborg cat ignored the mission, wandered off to chase a bug, and vanished into the city. Decades of research were erased in minutes simply because felines refused to take orders. 2. Building an entire fake replica city just to trick the enemy is the ultimate bait and switch. During World War I, the French government was terrified of German Zeppelin bombers, so they began building a second fake Paris just outside the real one. They went full Hollywood set designer, constructing detailed wooden streets, fake train stations, and an electrical grid designed to look exactly like the capital at night. The grand plan was that sleepy German pilots would see the lights, drop their payload on empty wooden planks, and fly home feeling victorious. The ironic twist is that the war ended before the decoy city was fully finished, meaning all that effort went into a ghost town that never fooled a single plane. 3. Dropping fake animal feces into the jungle to win a war is exactly the kind of unhinged strategy the CIA utilized during the Vietnam War. Desperate to track troop movements along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, American intelligence designed highly sensitive seismic sensors meant to look perfectly natural in the wild. The camouflage of choice was shaping these high-tech gadgets into realistic tiger droppings. The logic was rock solid, since nobody is going to closely inspect a fresh pile of tiger waste. These battery-powered turds successfully transmitted ground vibrations to circling aircraft, helping map enemy logistics. It remains one of the few times in military history where stepping in poop meant you were officially caught in a sophisticated surveillance dragnet. 4. Hollywood wants you to believe that feudal Japanese ninjas could elegantly run across rivers, but their actual water-walking gadgets were essentially giant wooden clown shoes. The invention was called the Mizu Gumo, and it consisted of 4 curved pieces of wood strung together to look like an oversized lily pad strapped to the bottom of their boots. The theory was that the wide surface area would displace the assassin's weight and let them slide across a castle moat. In brutal reality, balancing on these things was nearly impossible, meaning the deadliest stealth operatives in history probably spent most of their time violently splashing around and desperately trying not to flip upside down in front of the guards. 5. Weaponizing rabies is one thing, but strapping actual explosives to 1 million Mexican free-tailed bats is pure World War II madness. The American military seriously funded Project X-Ray, intending to attach tiny incendiary bombs to sleepy bats and drop them over Japanese cities. The theory was that these nocturnal agents would roost in wooden buildings and simultaneously ignite, causing widespread chaos. In a spectacular twist of karma, the test run in New Mexico proved disastrous. The armed bats were released, got chilly, and decided the best place to nap was right beneath the fuel tanks of a brand new U.S. Army airbase. The bats accidentally ignited the fuel, burning the American testing facility to ashes and proving that weaponizing wild mammals is a volatile idea. 6. Pitching the idea of glowing radioactive wildlife to win World War II is peak sleep-deprived military logic. The American military launched Operation Fantasia, which involved painting live foxes with highly radioactive luminous paint. The bizarre theory was that Japanese soldiers were superstitious and would be terrified by glowing ghost animals running through the night. They released these poor radioactive foxes into a public park in Washington, D.C. to test it out, causing panic among local citizens taking an evening stroll. Unsurprisingly, the project was scrapped because you cannot secretly control where a confused, glowing radioactive animal decides to run, and giving local wildlife cancer is generally considered bad strategy. 7. Imagine being a messenger in ancient Greece and your boss tells you the secret code is your scalp. Around 500 BC, a Greek ruler named Histiaeus needed to send a classified message to trigger a revolt against the Persians. Instead of writing a letter, he grabbed his most trusted servant, shaved his head bald, and tattooed the secret message directly onto his skin. They then had to sit around and wait weeks for the guy's hair to grow back so the text was hidden. The servant then walked through enemy lines looking normal, arrived at the destination, and shaved his head again to deliver the mail. The patience required to use a human haircut as a top-secret envelope is absurd. 8. Stealing a diplomat's shoes just to turn them into walking radio stations is exactly the kind of tedious paranoia that defined the Cold War. In the 1950s, the Romanian Secret Service hatched an intrusive plan to spy on Western diplomats by intercepting their footwear. Whenever a diplomat sent their favorite leather shoes to the local cobbler for repairs, agents would intercept them and hollow out the wooden heel. They installed a tiny microphone, a hidden battery, and a radio transmitter right into the sole. The diplomat would then unknowingly broadcast every secret conversation they had while pacing around their private office. It is funny to realize that international intelligence networks were defeated by a simple trip to the shoe repair shop. 9. Weaponizing massive Victorian fashion choices is the most brilliant smuggling tactic of the American Civil War. Female spies working for the Confederacy realized that male border guards were too embarrassed to physically search a lady wearing a giant bell-shaped hoop skirt. So these women started tying heavy cavalry boots, rolls of expensive silk, and bundles of rifles directly to the inner metal cages of their dresses. They would confidently waddle right through strict military checkpoints sounding like a walking hardware store, while the flustered guards just tipped their hats and politely ignored the fact that the lady was clearly transporting 50 pounds of stolen artillery under her petticoats. 10. Forget expensive stealth drones, because the original aerial reconnaissance program relied entirely on breadcrumbs and feathers. Long before satellites existed, a German apothecary named Julius Neubronner invented the Pigeon camera in the early 20th century. He strapped a miniature time-delayed aluminum camera to the chest of a homing pigeon and simply let the bird fly. The military realized that pigeons naturally flew lower than airplanes, easily dodged enemy fire, and took shockingly crisp photographs of defensive positions. Both sides adopted this bizarre avian espionage during World War I and World War II, turning city park pests into decorated intelligence officers. It is brilliantly simple, assuming your spy does not get distracted by a discarded French fry. 11. Leaving a dead animal on the street is disgusting, but the CIA turned it into brilliant Cold War tradecraft. American spies operating in Moscow needed a safe way to leave money and coded messages for their local informants without meeting face-to-face. So they created the dead drop rat, which was a taxidermy rat with a hidden Velcro pocket sewn into its stomach. Spies would stuff the hollow rodent with classified film and casually toss it into a dirty alleyway for the contact to pick up later. The unexpected flaw was that stray Russian cats kept trying to eat the secret agents. The CIA had to start dousing their fake rats in hot sauce just to keep hungry alley cats from running away with sensitive government intelligence. 12. Convincing the entire planet that eating root vegetables gives you superhuman night vision is the most successful military lie ever told. During World War II, the British Royal Air Force secretly invented advanced airborne radar, allowing their pilots to shoot down German bombers in pitch darkness. To hide this game-changing technology, British intelligence launched a fake news campaign claiming their pilots just ate a ridiculous amount of carrots. They printed posters, wrote articles, and convinced the German military that extreme vegetable consumption was the secret to night vision. Millions of people today still believe this brilliant military psyop every single time they eat a salad. 13. Sending the world's most critical military warning on a blank piece of wood is the ultimate ancient power move. Back when the Persians were preparing a surprise invasion of Greece, an exiled king named Demaratus needed to send a desperate heads-up to Sparta. Instead of risking a normal letter, he took a standard wooden writing tablet, scraped off all the writing wax, carved his secret message directly into the bare wood, and then poured a fresh layer of blank wax over it. The Persian border guards searched his messenger, found nothing but an empty notebook, and let him walk away with the most important intelligence of the decade. 14. Fooling the enemy with an entire division of fake military equipment is exactly what the American Ghost Army did during World War II. Instead of driving heavy steel machinery to the front lines, these specially trained artists and sound engineers deployed hundreds of inflatable rubber tanks. They spent their mornings pumping up life-sized Sherman tanks with air compressors in empty French fields. To make the illusion perfect, they drove speakers broadcasting the recorded sounds of rumbling engines and clanking treads. German reconnaissance planes flew over, photographed the buildup, and reported a huge armored presence. It is absurd to imagine fierce generals frantically moving troops to counter a terrifying army composed entirely of giant green balloons. 15. Planning a royal assassination plot through the local brewery delivery guy is a surprisingly terrible idea. In the 16th century, Mary Queen of Scots was locked in a castle and desperately needed to smuggle coded letters to her supporters to overthrow the English crown. Her espionage network bribed the local brewer who delivered her weekly supply of ale. They rolled up the treasonous ciphered letters, stuffed them into tiny watertight wooden tubes, and shoved them straight through the bunghole of the beer kegs. It was a flawless system until the thirsty guards randomly inspected a barrel and immediately found the floating tubes of high treason, ruining their weekend drinks. 16. Developing a classified chemical weapon just to make someone smell incredibly bad was an actual project funded by American intelligence. During World War II, scientists invented a potent foul-smelling spray perfectly nicknamed humi. The grand tactical vision was to arm members of the French resistance with tiny pocket-sized squirt guns filled with this putrid liquid. The operatives were supposed to sneak up behind decorated, strict German officers in crowded cafes and discreetly spray their uniforms. The goal was simply to humiliate the officers by making everyone around them think they had suffered a terrible bathroom accident. Spending secret research funds just to execute the ultimate playground prank on enemy generals is completely unhinged. 17. Building a robotic bug sounds like a ridiculous spy movie trope, but the CIA actually tried it in the 1970s with an invention called the insectoopter. American intelligence wanted a microscopic listening device, so they spent a fortune engineering a miniature mechanical dragonfly powered by a tiny fluidic motor. It was a masterpiece of Cold War espionage that could actually flap its wings and fly while carrying a microscopic microphone. The glaring issue they forgot to calculate was the weather. During its outdoor testing, this million-dollar piece of elite spy hardware was immediately blown off course by a gentle crosswind. The project was trashed because you cannot spy on your enemies if your agent gets defeated by a light summer breeze. 18. Playing violent puppet shows in the middle of a muddy ditch was a highly effective sniper detection tactic during World War I. British and French soldiers were tired of getting shot at when they peeked over the trench, so they grabbed some newspapers and made papier-mâché replica heads. They painted on creepy faces, popped a spare helmet on top, and slowly raised the fake head over the sandbags using a wooden stick. The enemy sniper would shoot the dummy right between the eyes, leaving two perfect bullet holes that the Allied soldiers could mathematically line up to figure out exactly which bush the shooter was hiding behind. 19. Dropping massive bombs is expensive, but making the enemy incredibly uncomfortable is brilliantly cheap. During World War II, the British Special Operations Executive decided to smuggle potent itching powder into German clothing factories across occupied Europe. The operatives managed to rub this highly aggressive powder directly into the fabric of thousands of uniforms specifically destined for German submarine crews. When the sailors went to sea in tightly sealed hot metal tubes, the powder fully activated, causing a nightmare of uncontrollable scratching. It is absurd but effective, because a stressed-out crew convinced they have a contagious skin disease is a crew incapable of fighting a naval war. 20. Sailing into a brutal naval battle while aggressively flaunting a pastel pink battleship is a totally unhinged aesthetic choice. During World War II, a British commander named Lord Mountbatten realized that ships painted a very specific shade of bright pink blended in with the glowing colors of sunrise and sunset. He forced his entire fleet to paint their heavily armed destroyers in a color that can only be described as absolute bubblegum. Imagine being a terrified enemy submarine captain, peering through your periscope, expecting to see gray steel, and instead getting charged down by a massive Barbie dreamboat armed with heavy artillery. It is the ultimate tactical disrespect, looking fabulous right before blowing the enemy to pieces. 21. Dropping brightly colored rice all over the floor sounds like a toddler mess, but feudal Japanese ninjas used it as a sophisticated cipher. The tactic was called Goshikimai, where assassins dyed normal grains of rice into 5 distinct colors. By arranging these specific colored grains on a temple floor or a forest path, they created an elaborate secret code to warn other ninjas about guard patrols. The glaringly obvious problem was that rice is basically universal bird food. A top-tier stealth operative could spend an hour meticulously laying out a vital tactical warning, only for a flock of hungry pigeons to eat the intelligence before the next shift arrived. 22. Sitting inside a fake tree for days while artillery shells rain down sounds like a bad fever dream, but it was actual British military doctrine in World War I. To spy on German trenches without getting their heads blown off, the Royal Engineers secretly measured real trees in no man's land under the cover of darkness. They then cut down the original tree, replacing it with an identical hollow replica made of steel and covered in real bark. A lone soldier would crawl through a subterranean tunnel, climb up inside the claustrophobic metal trunk, and peer through a tiny mesh window to report enemy movements. It was a nerve-wracking assignment where your only defense against a direct artillery hit was pretending to be a very quiet oak. 23. Hiding vital escape equipment inside popular board games is a brilliant strategy that the British military successfully executed. During World War II, Allied intelligence secretly collaborated with the manufacturers of Monopoly to create specialized espionage editions of the game. They concealed indestructible silk escape maps, miniature metal compasses, and real currency directly underneath the colorful game board. Since the Geneva Convention allowed prisoners of war to receive recreational games and charity care packages, the German guards ignored these innocent-looking deliveries. Captured soldiers would unpack their game night supplies, extract the spy gear, and quietly plan their grand escape right under the noses of their oblivious captors. 24. Turning the entire city into an anonymous snitch line using terrifying masonry is peak Renaissance paranoia. The rulers of medieval Venice wanted to catch foreign spies and traitors, so they installed giant stone faces of screaming lions all over the walls of the city. These terrifying sculptures had massive open mouths, with a deep slot cut right through the stone. Citizens were actively encouraged to write anonymous, salty letters accusing their annoying neighbors of being secret enemy agents, and then just drop the paper straight into the monster's mouth. It was basically the 16th century version of a toxic internet comment section, where you could ruin a guy's life just by feeding a hateful note to a stone beast. 25. Blowing up an enemy train by giving them free fuel is a delightfully devious tactic from the American Civil War. A Confederate secret agent named Thomas Courtney invented the coal torpedo, which was an iron bomb meticulously cast and painted to look exactly like a random lump of dirty coal. Rebel spies would sneak into Union railway yards at night and toss these explosive fakes right into the piles of fuel waiting to be loaded. Confused train conductors would shovel what they thought was regular coal directly into the blazing steam boilers of their locomotives. The extreme heat would ignite the hidden gunpowder, causing the entire train engine to explode simply because nobody suspects a rock to be an undercover saboteur. 26. Texting your friends in the 4th century BC required 2 identically sized buckets of water and a whole lot of mountain climbing. An ancient Greek tactician named Aeneas invented the hydraulic telegraph, which was basically a giant waterproof timer. Two outposts on different hills would raise a torch, pull the plug on their water bucket at the exact same time, and wait. When the water drained down to a specific line marked with a prearranged message, they dropped the torch to stop the flow. It is hilarious to think that the fate of an entire ancient military campaign relied entirely on two guys having perfectly synchronized plumbing and hoping neither of them blinked. 27. Tossing live birds out of heavy bombers in tiny parachutes is possibly the most ridiculous visual of World War II espionage. The British intelligence services desperately needed information from occupied France, so they devised a plan to drop homing pigeons to local resistance fighters. Since throwing a bird out of a fast-moving plane is a terrible idea, they strapped the pigeons into specially designed cardboard boxes equipped with miniature silk parachutes. The goal was for the birds to float gently into random French pastures, where friendly farmers would hopefully find them, write down German troop movements, and release the avian spies. Trusting critical intelligence to a confused pigeon wearing a parachute is pure historical madness. 28. Forget waiting for a quiet rescue helicopter, because the CIA during the Cold War decided the best way to extract a spy was to yank them into the sky. It was called the Fulton skyhook system. An undercover agent on the ground would put on a heavy-duty harness, inflate a balloon connected to a long nylon line, and sit on the dirt waiting. A military airplane would fly over at high speed, catch the glowing balloon string with a metal hook on its nose, and instantly rip the agent right off the earth. It looks like the most ridiculous cartoon physics imaginable, but it was an actively used tactical extraction method that genuinely terrified everyone who had to use it. 29. Accepting a lovely wooden carving from a group of cheerful Soviet schoolchildren seems harmless until you realize it is a brilliant espionage trap. In the 1940s, the Soviet Union gifted a beautiful replica of the Great Seal to the American ambassador in Moscow. The Americans checked it for batteries or wires, found nothing, and proudly hung it inside the ambassador's private office. It sat there for 7 years, broadcasting every secret conversation to Soviet intelligence. The device was a passive cavity bug, a clever metal membrane that only activated when a radio beam was pointed at the building from outside. The most powerful nation on Earth was outsmarted by a block of wood and some smiling kids. 30. Reading the morning newspaper with a giant magnifying glass to find tiny holes is exactly how Victorian spies beat the system. Instead of risking a handwritten letter, an agent would buy a completely normal, publicly printed newspaper and grab a sharp sewing needle. They would meticulously poke microscopic, nearly invisible holes straight through specific printed letters on the front page to spell out a secret message. They then simply mailed the daily news across enemy lines. A border guard would inspect the paper, find no secret writing, and pass it along. The recipient just held the newspaper up to a bright window and read the glowing pinpricks of light spelling out military intelligence. 31. Trying to win the American Revolution by paddling a giant wooden barrel underwater is absolute frat house engineering. In the 1770s, a guy named David Bushnell invented the turtle, which was a hollowed-out wooden acorn designed to fit one extremely claustrophobic soldier. The brave operative had to sit inside the pitch-black barrel, crank a hand pedal to spin the propeller, and float silently under a British warship. The mission was to drill a hole into the enemy hull and attach a bomb. But nobody realized British ships were lined with copper, and the carbon dioxide was building up fast, meaning the exhausted American dude just bumped his wooden drill against heavy metal before running out of air and paddling away in defeat. 32. Sitting down at a piano to casually play a terribly composed song was actually a genius form of Renaissance espionage. Instead of writing invisible ink, brilliant 16th century spies replaced the alphabet with specific musical notes painted onto a standard staff. An undercover operative could safely mail a normal-looking sheet of original sheet music to a contact across the border. Enemy guards inspecting the mail just saw a harmless classical composition and let it through. The hilarious catch is that when you actually played the secret code out loud on an instrument, it sounded like an absolute disaster of random chaotic noise because the letters formed a terrible melody. 33. Smuggling classified geography lessons inside a standard deck of playing cards is a brilliantly sneaky tactic used during World War II. American and British intelligence agencies joined forces with a famous card company to create highly customized decks meant specifically for prisoners of war. When a captured soldier soaked these specific cards in a bowl of water, the outer paper would peel apart to reveal hidden map sections concealed between the layers. The prisoners would then carefully piece the damp cards together like a jigsaw puzzle to form a detailed map of the surrounding European terrain. It is ironic that German guards actively encouraged their prisoners to play endless card games, unaware they were handing out the exact tools needed for a grand breakout. 34. Imagine the most advanced military cryptography being completely defeated because the enemy picked up a slightly thicker branch. The ancient Spartans invented the skytale, a leather belt covered in random gibberish letters. The spy would wrap the leather strip tightly around a specific wooden stick, and suddenly the letters aligned to spell out tactical orders. It was a simple cipher, right up until the messenger lost his specific piece of wood and had to frantically test every single tree branch in the forest just to read his own mail. It is fundamentally hilarious that state secrets were protected by nothing but the exact diameter of a random twig. 35. When you think of George Washington, you picture a stoic general, but his elite spy ring used laundry hanging on a clothesline as a secret signaling system. During the American Revolution, a woman named Anna Strong operated as a lookout for the Culper ring near a British stronghold in New York. Whenever a rebel messenger arrived by boat to collect intelligence, Anna would casually hang a solid black petticoat on her washing line. She then hung a specific number of white handkerchiefs next to it to secretly broadcast exactly which local cove the smuggler was hiding in. The British Army marched right past her yard daily, oblivious that a simple pile of wet undergarments was actively orchestrating their military downfall. 36. Dropping fake mail onto a war zone sounds like a terrible post office mistake, but it was a genuine psychological tactic called Operation Cornflakes. During World War II, American intelligence services forged exact replicas of German postal bags and filled them with brilliantly disguised anti-Nazi propaganda letters. The chaotic strategy was to wait for an Allied bombing raid on a German mail train, and then quickly drop these fake mailbags right into the fresh wreckage. The wildly optimistic hope was that confused German railway workers would clean up the mess, find the forged bags, and dutifully deliver the fake mail directly to German civilian breakfast tables. Relying on the efficiency of the enemy postal service to distribute your own propaganda is a bizarre strategy. 37. Using your garden weeds as invisible ink sounds like a cheap magic trick, but ancient Roman spies swore by it. The philosopher Pliny the Elder documented how secret agents would extract the toxic, milky sap from a common plant called tithymalis. They used this clear liquid to write heavily classified military coordinates on perfectly ordinary scrolls. When the paper dried, the writing completely vanished. To read the secret message, the recipient simply had to sprinkle fine ash all over the document, and the dust would stick only to the sticky plant residue. It is basically the ancient world equivalent of tossing glitter on a top-secret document to reveal the truth. 38. Signing up to be an elite military scout in ancient China meant your commanding officer might tie you to a giant paper kite and wish you good luck. To spy on heavily fortified enemy castles, ancient chronicles claim military engineers constructed massive kites made from bamboo and silk. They would strap a lightweight soldier to the wooden frame, wait for a massive gust of wind, and launch him straight into the sky. The guy had to float hundreds of feet in the air, sketch out the enemy troop formations on paper, and pray the ground crew did not accidentally let go of the string holding him alive. 39. Pulling the ultimate naval catfish maneuver was standard British strategy against enemy submarines. During World War I, the Royal Navy built the legendary Q ships, which were heavily armed war vessels desperately trying to look like helpless, rusty old merchant boats. They would put their crew in dirty civilian clothes, pile fake wooden crates on the deck, and slowly chug along, looking like an easy target. When an enemy U-boat confidently surfaced to sink the supposedly defenseless cargo ship, the British sailors would rip down the fake canvas walls to reveal a terrifying array of hidden cannons. Yelling surprise while unleashing a devastating barrage of point-blank artillery fire is peak military comedy. 40. Chewing on your own wardrobe to destroy evidence is a stressful reality for 19th century undercover agents. During the American Civil War, spies wore specially tailored coats featuring hollowed-out brass buttons that could unscrew into two separate pieces. Agents would write classified troop movements on microscopic pieces of tissue paper, fold them into tiny squares, and screw them inside their jacket buttons. The absolute panic set in if you ever got stopped by a suspicious enemy patrol because your only emergency protocol was to rip the button off your own chest, unscrew it with shaking fingers, and swallow the brass before the guard realized what you were eating. 41. Defending a fortress in ancient China involved a bizarre audio surveillance system utilizing giant clay pots. Thousands of years ago, defenders knew the enemy would try to dig secret underground tunnels to bypass the city walls. To stop this, military commanders buried large, empty ceramic jars deep into the ground along the fortress perimeter and covered them with thin leather. They hired blind men with sharp hearing to press their ears against these ancient acoustic amplifiers. If enemy soldiers started digging far away, the hollow jars echoed the vibrations loudly enough for the listeners to pinpoint the tunnel location. It was a highly advanced sonar system powered entirely by pottery and human concentration. 42. Hiding classified intelligence inside your breakfast is the kind of genius absurdity you expect from a cartoon. But it was a real 16th century tactic. An Italian scholar named Giovanni Battista della Porta invented a clever way to smuggle secret messages past nosy guards. He formulated a special ink made from alum and vinegar and used it to write directly on the shell of a hard-boiled egg. The liquid would soak right through the porous shell without leaving a mark on the outside, staining the message perfectly onto the actual egg white inside. A spy could stroll through a checkpoint carrying a basket of normal groceries, only for the recipient to peel their lunch and read top-secret tactical data. 43. Let us talk about the stressful tactic of hiding secret scrolls inside a hollow smoking pipe. Back in the 18th century, sending a letter meant putting it on a horse for weeks, making it easy for guards to search random messengers. Spies started rolling tiny pieces of paper tightly and shoving them down the long wooden stems of their tobacco pipes. If an enemy patrol stopped the spy for interrogation, the agent would casually light up the pipe and start puffing away to look relaxed. The sheer panic of sitting there, having a friendly chat with an armed guard while hoping the burning tobacco does not accidentally ignite the top-secret military intelligence hiding 3 inches from your mouth, is hilarious. 44. Imagine the audacity of a sitting monarch putting on a fake beard, grabbing a cheap guitar, and walking straight into an enemy war camp to play a gig. In the 9th century, King Alfred the Great of England was losing a brutal war against the invading Vikings. Instead of staying safely in his castle, he disguised himself as a wandering medieval minstrel and strolled right into the Viking camp. He spent days walking around their tents, playing terrible acoustic folk songs, and drinking their ale, all while mentally mapping out their entire defensive strategy. He then walked out, went back to his own army, and used his concert tour knowledge to destroy them. That was a lot of taxpayer money set on fire for absolutely nothing. But history is full of even worse ideas. So, challenge me. What absolutely catastrophic military failure or insane spy gadget did I miss in this list? Dig deep into your obscure history knowledge and expose it in the comments right now. Destroy the like button if you enjoyed the chaos, and subscribe for more declassified madness.